So, I was flying around in a hurry this morning and I had a bit of incident? Don't worry. See, I can put myself back together in a snap. Stings. But it just made me think, you guys are kind of squishy like an old piece of fruit in your lunch bag on a really hot day. Ew. So if you got into trouble on the road, you might find it a bit harder to put yourself back together again. But hey, my internet medical degree got revoked, so here's a real doctor to give you the facts.
My name is Paul Scott. I'm a doctor at the Royal Brisbane and Women's Hospital. Young people are at risk of pedestrian injuries for a variety of reasons, one of which is that their brains are still developing and so they have trouble perceiving speed. When they see a car coming, they may not understand how fast that car is actually moving, but often they're due to things like the pedestrians being distracted when they cross a road. For example, they might be listening to music and not be thinking about what's happening on the road. They might be on their phone or reading a text message. But we are not designed to be hit by really fast-moving, heavy objects like a car. As a result, if you do get hit by a car, you will get severe injuries. Broken arms, broken legs. You can have internal injuries that require operations. There might be injuries to the brain, facial injuries. One of the scariest injuries from a doctor's point of view is when the spine is damaged. The spine has bones around it, but it's also got very delicate nerve material inside it. When that's injured, that can mean that you lose the ability to use your legs or your arms. One case I was involved in was a 10-year-old boy who chased a cricket ball out onto the road. Because he was focused on the ball, he didn't notice a car coming and he got hit by a car. He received quite a few injuries, but including a broken arm, but the worst part about it was he got an injury to his brain. He had to have an operation to relieve some of the bleeding around the brain. He was unable to, or had trouble talking afterwards, and that requires many, many months or even years of rehabilitation to teach him to talk properly again, which is a devastating thing to happen to you when you're so young. The doctors and nurses find it difficult to look after these patients because we know that what it means for them and the rest of their life. It's really scary. They might be in a lot of pain, and it has big impacts on their family and friends as well. The things that young people can do to stay safe around the road is really about really appreciating how dangerous it is to be near the road and to be near moving cars. I think things like making sure you cross at a crossing that's marked as a pedestrian crossing. If there are lights, wait for the lights to turn so that you can cross safely. Don't rush across before. It's not worth it to save a couple of seconds and risk being hit by a car. Stop, look, listen, and really think about what you're doing before you cross the road.
Did you know your brains are a bit like a plate of jelly? They're pink and wobbly and taste like strawberry. Oh, wait, scratch the last one. But they're definitely soft, and if you don't protect them, well... See what I mean? That's why you need to protect your head when you're travelling on anything with wheels. Here's a brain expert to talk about why helmets are so important.
My name's Dr. Lindy and I'm a neurosurgeon at the Royal Brisbane Hospital. I decided to do neurosurgery because your brain's so incredibly complicated and precious, but it's also very fragile. Your brain is the computer that makes your body work, but instead of being made of electronics and wires, it's made out of nerve cells and supporting cells, and it's actually very soft. So in a living brain, it's about the consistency of jelly. You can imagine if I had a bowl of jelly and I dropped it on the ground, even though it's in a container, it'll get hurt. And the same thing happens when you give a hard knock to your brain. Unfortunately, your skull doesn't protect your brain terribly well. The first problem is that there's all these ridges and knobs inside it. And when you bump your head, your brain slides across all those ridges and that causes damage to the underside. And then it slams into your skull and that causes bruising and can cause bleeding. If you hit the ground hard enough, your brain then bounces off and bangs into the skull on the other side, and that causes another bruise. And during all of that sliding and stretching, you can tear the delicate nerve cells inside. The first thing that might happen if you hit your head hard enough is you get knocked out. But the most common symptoms are actually headache and nausea, so feeling sick all the time. You might have memory problems, or you might have a seizure, which is like your brain hitting automatic reset. If you have a really bad head injury, there might be really obvious problems. For example, one side might not move, or you might not be able to talk properly. And these can last for months or years. The other common problems are difficulty with concentrating and difficulty in thinking about complex subjects. And so that includes schoolwork, things like maths or learning Spanish, but it also includes things like social interaction. So you might have difficulty keeping up with the games your friends are playing, or you might not be able to tell if someone's angry with you. And that can be a real problem later in life. So it's obviously really important that you look after your brain and protect it. One important way of protecting your brain is to wear a helmet. Even a fall just from standing height is enough to give yourself a bad head injury. But when you're on a skateboard or a push bike, you're much more likely to be going fast. It's really important whenever you're on wheels or up high or going fast that you're wearing a helmet. If I drop an egg onto sponge foam, the foam squashes down and that absorbs the energy and protects the egg. And the same thing happens if you hit the ground wearing a bike helmet. The foam in the helmet squashes and that absorbs the energy and protects your brain. Unlike the sponge foam, the foam in your bike helmet doesn't bounce back after it's been squashed. And that's why it's so important. You must never wear a helmet again after it's had a hard knock. Even if it looks okay on the outside, it might be broken inside and not protect you anymore.
Where's the zombie emoji gone? Ah, there it is. Oh, sorry, just sending a text to Grandma. See, it's pretty easy to get distracted when you're on... Oh, cute! Distracted when you're on your phone, which makes it harder to stay safe. Let's hear more from our brain expert about why it's so hard to focus on two things at once.
Surprisingly, you've only got one attention. In the same way as you've got one nose and one mouth, you can only pay attention to one thing at a time, and nothing you can do can change that. Your attention works a bit like a camera lens. It can either be wide view and looking at a lot of things at once, but not focus properly on any of them, or it can be zoomed in and paying close attention to one thing. When you're trying to do two things at once, or when you're distracted, that means the lens is switching back and forth between more than one thing, and obviously not concentrating properly on either of them. In Australia, 20 times more pedestrians are hurt in accidents than people hurt in plane crashes. One of the reasons flying is so safe is that pilots always do a pre-flight check before they take off, and you should do the same before you cross the road. So stop mucking around with your friends, finish your phone call, take out your earbuds, listen, look, think, is it safe to cross? And then when you're safely over, you can put your music back on and start playing with your friends again. Be careful crossing the road, because I don't want you back in here as a patient.
So, there you have it. The real stories from the real experts. Just remember, when you're out and about, take a few extra moments to make sure you're travelling safe. You don't want to hurt your brain jelly. You only have so much. Later.